In Ukraine, really, there are two wars going on. There's one fought on the battlefield with drones, with soldiers, with tactics, and the other waged in the darkness against civilians, dormitories, hospitals, apartment blocks. And Vladimir Putin, steeled by the myth of Russian resilience, now seems to believe he's winning not just a war, but history itself. But at what cost? And with what illusions, quite apart from the fact that his eye colour seems to have changed from blue to brown. Let's not begin with the smouldering ruins of Kiev, but with the surreal tableau. Vladimir Putin in a high-vis jacket and hard hat, smiling serenely in the Kursk nuclear plant. He drinks tea with volunteers while footage of a missile strike in Sumy, which he calls good news, plays in the background. For the Kremlin's war theatre, optics matter more than outcomes. This is classic strongman imagery. Calm at the centre of the storm, visiting a region freshly cleansed of Ukrainian forces, selling an image of control and inevitability, its delusion built on destruction. There's a chilling asymmetry in this war too. When Ukraine strikes military or industrial targets in Russia, like the electronics plant in Oriol, we hear of fires, disruption and tactical success. Civilian deaths are rare, even in drone strikes deep inside Russia. But when Russia attacks, it's residential Kyiv, industrial Kharkiv, school dormitories in Holosivsky, 11 people wounded last night in Kyiv alone, among them a young woman with a broken leg, a man burned to death in his car in Konstantinivka, a teenager crushed to death by glass in Kharkiv. The pattern isn't incidental, it's intentional. The targeting of civilians trialled in Kharkiv itself has been systematized, refined, and now rolled out across Ukraine as standard military doctrine by Russia. This isn't accidental hitting, this is targeting. People with monitors following their drone until it hits. This is not war in the conventional sense. This is punitive spectacle. Russia's FPV drones, like the Molniya-1, now reach well beyond front lines. With fibre optic guidance systems immune to jamming, they are transforming Ukraine's logistics and defensive capabilities into nightmares. Soldiers walk 8 kilometres to avoid detection. Casualty evacuation is delayed by hours. The front line is no longer a line but a fluid kill zone. Yet none of this justifies the systematic killing and targeting of civilians. A drone guided into a student dormitory is not a battlefield error, it's a deliberate act of psychological warfare. So why does Putin do it? Because in his eyes, blue or brown, he is winning. He hears Trump on the phone talking of trade deals and catastrophic bloodbaths and believes Ukraine has become a bargaining chip, a broken pawn to be traded in return for sanctions relief. Putin sees every burned-out bloc in Kyiv as a step towards a neutral Ukraine, towards a fractured NATO, towards a second Yalta conference in which he can pose as the new arbiter of European borders. But it's a hollow victory. NATO is not withdrawing, China is not overcommitting, and inside Russia the cost is mounting. The opposition is brooding, not just in the estimated 790,000 dead and wounded, but in the psychological disfigurement of a generation trained to kill and returned to towns with no jobs, no therapy, no answers. This is disruption being nurtured, this is awaiting a revolution. Putin has cast himself as a latter-day Peter the Great or Catherine, but Russian history tells another story. The Crimean War led to reform. The Russo-Japanese War led to revolution. The Afghanistan War to the end of the Soviet Union. In each case, military humiliation bred domestic upheaval. What makes this war so dangerous is that Putin knows it too. He cannot afford to stop. Peace would mean repatriating 1 million angry, traumatized men, many of whom now see the Kremlin as their greatest enemy. They may not say it openly at the moment. It turns up occasionally in a line here or there on Telegram. You can hear it when you speak to people directly. His only option is to continue the myth of strength, of sacrifice, of sovereign triumph. as people struggle to buy butter in the supermarkets. As Kyiv's residents sleep in metro stations, the world must ask what Putin's missiles truly achieve. Every dormitory destroyed, every civilian killed, further isolates Russia from the civilized world. The devil comes in the dark, and he carries a drone. But this war will not be won in the skies over Sumy or the basements of Konstantinivka. It will be won or lost in the hearts of Russians when they see that what was promised as greatness was in fact a grotesque deception, a distortion of reality. And as for Ukraine, the question remains, will the West simply watch, or will it finally act, not with words but with resolve?